Okay, this one was really nerve-wracking. This is a completely autonomous survey mission. Just testing some more of the features of the Pixhawk. It was really windy. This is 3 o'clock or so in the afternoon. I really need a wind gauge. Actually, it's an anemometer. Because it really got buffeted around and stuff. So this is supposed to do a simple survey at 35 feet. I flipped it into auto, and off it goes. I can hear it in my earbud talking to me. Goes to the first waypoint, turns to go down the field, and goes and goes and goes and goes. I'm not sure if it's parallax error or it's just there's like 2 or 3 soccer fields here. It's a really large field. It kept going towards the other end of the field, and in my mind it was getting lower and lower and closer to the bank on the other end. I wasn't hearing that it was hitting the waypoint. I kept waiting, hoping, waiting, and then I finally got scared and flipped it into stabilize mode, popped it up in the air a little bit, and hit return to launch. Aborted the mission. I think it actually got to the waypoint, but it rocked where I could see the arms, and I thought it had hit the bank. That's why I was walking towards it. Luckily, there was no problem. I'm sorry this is lost in the clutter, but this is a extremely large field. There it comes, coming back to return to launch. I just took the Hexa, the RC, and this is a droid planner telemetry mission, just so I don't have to carry that computer around, etc. It came back to launch and landed like it's supposed to. No problem whatsoever. So I decided to kind of get closer to the other end of the field and rerun the auto mission. Has to get on the ground first. So it's on the ground. I'm moving towards the other end of the field so I can see better. And I restart the mission from 0. Well, it comes up, but obviously doesn't go to 35 feet. So I flipped it into stabilize mode and popped it up. And there she is, way up in the air. I hit return to launch again. Now I trusted it was going to go to launch. But I decided to basically start again from scratch. So I let it sit there. As it sits, the accelerometer's gyros all settle more and more and more and more. The longer it sits, the more satellites it'll lock up. everything. Boy, it'd be nice if I had battery power to let it sit for 4 or 5 minutes, just sitting on power. No power to the ESCs are armed yet. But I'm not that patient. So I decided we'll go again. Armed it. Flipped the auto switch. It seems to go back towards approximately 35 feet. And I can hear in my earbud it's headed for the proper waypoint. So I sort of head for the other side of the field again. I like this. It's kind of high in the air. It hit the waypoint it had hit before again and starts down the field. I'm sorry all this is so shaky. I'm walking with the GoPro on my hat. I really need a second person. They could have been at the other end of the field and told me I wasn't running into the bank on the first attempt, or my altitude was too low, etc. I could film without walking, video without walking, I'm sorry, or have a second person filming, or be standing on top of the bank at this particular field filming. All sorts of possibilities. When you're solo, you pays your money, you takes your chances. It came down to this waypoint, oriented itself, headed for the next waypoint. See it flipping around there? That's the wind. It was really tough, and it made it kind of go up sometimes when it buffeted it. But it hit that waypoint, started for the other end of the field, so I said fine, I'll take that. Seemed to be at a good altitude. I'm sorry I'm going between looking at the drone planner because I can see the lines it's supposed to be following, and I can see the green waypoints on the screen. That sort of gives me confidence that it's not now going across the edge of the field in the other direction and into those trees, or getting too low. I can technically see it. You probably can't see it in the clutter right now. Again, sorry. So I hear in my earbud that it hit that waypoint. It's headed for the other one, so it's going parallel to me now. Hits the next one, turns coming towards me. So I moved up the field. I wanted to sort of get ahead of where it would turn when it got here. And I stopped to wait on it. Again, I keep looking at where it is along the path and where it is in relation to the next waypoint. You can see it coming there. Looks to be at 35 feet. The barometer settled down. I think that's a temperature problem. Comes to the waypoint. Reorients towards me. Comes to the waypoint that's right in front of me. Reorients to go back down the field to the last waypoint. So now I'm following it. I like it. You can't tell it in this video. GoPros just need a telephoto lens on a tripod with a camera person. Needs and what I have to work with are really two different things. I'm kind of moving fast here, trying to catch up to it, because I know this is the last waypoint and it's supposed to do a return to launch after it hits this final waypoint. Now I'm not sure if that's going to work, so I'm trying to get down there where I can see it better. And it hits the waypoint and heads for home. I was pretty relieved at this point. And basically that's the whole test. I am going to do another little test here in a second. I raised my failsafe battery voltage from 13.2 volts to 13.6. I may go to 13.9 because I am getting 10 minutes, and actually in excess of 10 minutes out of the platform. So I'm confident with my timer on my transmitter to warn me when my 10-minute is up. There she is, doing the automated landing at the end of the mission. Bingo! Major test complete. So I flipped it into stabilized mode. Don't need to do the auto at this point. And I took back off. I wanted to test my mid-throttle setting. I changed it from 413 down to 400. 500 would be a 50% throttle setting. This thing is so overpowered, which I kind of like. So I got it up in the air here. I flipped it into altitude hold. Made sure it was all good, and then I flipped it into, made sure I was at 50% throttle, flipped it into stabilized mode, and it jumped up again. So I just went ahead and flipped it into return to launch, and see, I'm so confident with that now, I just turned my back on it. Sort of went to where it was going to land too. When I got home, I lowered that mid-throttle from 400 to 380, and I'm going to keep testing that mid-throttle setting so that I can set it at 50% throttle and the software will compensate. I want it to just go up a little bit. I don't want it to fall, but I don't want it to zoom up. So there you go. That's basically the end of that. Success. Let's go home. Okay, seeing we had the track during the video this time, well, just look at some of the data real quick. I'm still trying to see how my voltage does. Got some changes in it. I suspect that's from the wind buffeting it around. And this was, of course, the landing just before we went up the tested the mid-throttle point. Current running 20 amps. Got some low points in here where I took it back and landed it those 2 times before the actual mission actually took place here, and the current stayed pretty steady between 20-ish. Max 30 peak here, but basically 20 to 25 amps through. This is the other landing, and then this is where I tried the mid-throttle setting again. Look at some gyro data. good. Buffeting around, pretty stable. Yep. Pretty stable on that axis. Got some turns there, of course. Supposed to be. Accelerometers. Overall, not much in the way of anything strange there. Or there. It's a little peaked, but again, that's an instantaneous value. It looks like maybe 1 or 2 data points. Nothing to worry about. The second IMU, about the same deal. Looks much the same. Very much the same. They should be the same. Okay. And let's see if I remember. I found the altitude under CT run. So here's the altitude. And this is where I popped it up on the first RTL. 10 feet. It's got something going on here with this reading. I'm going to have to get with 3DR. Brought it back down the field with the auto return to landing. Then again, I started the mission over. This was that one where I ran it way up in the air. I think higher than 40 feet myself. Back, landing, and then this is the mission itself. The landing at the end, and this is that little test of mid-throttle I did. Look at the barometer. Looks much the same. That's really the only thing that's given altimeter here, except for the GPS can give altimeter. Overlay the two, pretty much the same. Let me see if there is a GPS altitude. GPS altitude overlaid with the altitude here. Causes a difference in the graph because but they look pretty much the same, the GPS, and a little bump right here that doesn't show in the GPS one. Other than that, pretty much the same. Barometric altitude and GPS altitude. Again, the bump here shows in both of those. I imagine the GPS seems to be affecting altitude more so than the barometer, perhaps. Just going to have to check into that. Okay, we'll run through the 10 minutes on the regular telemetry to see what's going on. I don't think I need to discuss this much. We'll just let it run to the end. Have a good one. So the altitude, sorry about that, altitude seems to be correct again. 35 feet, give or take, just a smidgen. As this thing performs more and more, it seems to be correct on a lot of these problems. I'm just going to have to keep looking at it. Maybe let it sit out in the ambient air longer, because that can really affect a barometer. as you can see here, my fear that it was getting close to the bank on the other end of the field was completely unfounded. It started out, it was pretty much getting ready to make the turn. The altitude was sort of a problem for me. I'm really still not sure about that barometer, or going to have to look into the GPS having more weight in the algorithm for altitude. But there's basically what I did today. A lot of fun. A lot of fun. Take all these out real quick. This is where we started in auto, and it came up, made that first waypoint turn, went down here, and I said RTL. And when it got here, I wanted it to be higher, so I put it in stabilize, brought it up, went back into RTL until it landed. Of course, you have to put it in stabilized mode again. Let's get rid of those. You have to put it in stabilized mode again to get it to arm. So there's not really much for that one. And then went back into auto again. This is where it went up 3 or 4 feet. I just wasn't confident, so I hit stabilized again and popped it up. Actually, it looks like I stuck it back in auto. It went down again. I didn't like it. I went back to stabilized mode and popped it up and hit RTL, and it went home and landed. So we saw that in the video. So I didn't let it completely disarm. So then this was the final auto, and it did everything it was supposed to do. So this is the stabilized again to arm it. I put it in altitude hold and then into loiter. Altitude hold, popped it up just a little bit there, then into loiter because of the wind till I could get it sort of stabilized at a little higher altitude. And then I tried to check the mid throttle, went to stabilize mode, and you can see it went up a little bit. And of course then I did another RTL, and it comes home and lands. That's about the end of it. Yeah, at the end of RTL it goes into stabilized anyway. So that's pretty much it.